Hey everybody, so we're going to jump into the Bill of Rights today, and this is something that we've talked a little bit about without really getting into the specifics of it. So where this started was actually in the ratification process of the Constitution. And you had two groups of people, if you remember. You had the Federalists, who thought the Constitution was great, best thing they've ever seen, and then you had the Anti-Federalists, who were a little concerned about the Constitution. And one of the main concerns that the Anti-Federalists had that we had talked about is that there was no protection for the rights of individuals. And the Constitution set up all the powers of government. These are the things that the government can do, the powers that the government has, but there was nothing in there that specifically laid out these are the rights of individuals. So the Anti-Federalists said, we're not going to support this until we get, some sort of protection for individuals. And so ultimately the Federalists and James Madison decided that, all right, we'll add this to the Constitution. So the Bill of Rights, there's 10 of them, and they are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. So amendments, remember from your terms and people, are official changes. These are the first 10 official changes then to the Constitution. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of walk through them one by one, and I'll try to keep it kind of short. I'll just give sort of a quick explanation of it. And then you guys should be having your Constitution guide out, and this is what we're going to work with is this. Oh, here we go. This page right here. Okay. And at the very end, I'll have some quick summaries of each of these that you can write down in your Constitution guide, and then they ask you to draw a little picture on there, which we can do as well. So here we go. First Amendment. So the First Amendment is an amendment that actually protects 5 freedoms for people. And what those 5 freedoms are the freedom of speech, basically meaning that you have the right to speak your mind. There are some limitations on all of these rights that we talk about. For example, limitation on freedom of speech would be you couldn't go into the Cozy Theater and start yelling about there being a fire, right? If there wasn't a fire. If there was a fire, that'd probably be a good thing to do. But if there wasn't a fire and you started yelling about there being a fire, probably what's going to happen is you're going to have people panicking and running over each other, and it's could create a dangerous situation. So that doesn't count. But if you really don't like what the governor's done, you can go stand on a street corner and tell anybody that will listen about how you don't like what the governor's doing, right? Freedom of speech. Freedom of press is basically the same thing, except for instead of people talking, it's publishing things. Publishing a newspaper article, publishing a magazine, that kind of stuff. You have the right to do that. Freedom of religion. This is where the government can't force you to follow any particular religion or support any particular religion. You're free to do what you want there, kind of follow your own conscience on that. Then they have right of assembly, which is basically gathering in groups. So Constitution says you have the right to gather with another group of people. And the right to petition the government. So if you think the government's doing something wrong, then you can challenge them on it. It might mean take them to court. It might mean a couple things, but the First Amendment guarantees that right for you too. So First Amendment, 5 freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, the right to assemble, and the right to petition the government. Second Amendment, this is the right to bear arms. So this one reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so the way they've read this is that you have the right to own a gun. You have the right to own weapons. And this might be my favorite video of the year. So here it comes.
All right, we're done.
You think the language in the Second Amendment is clear enough? You know, about the right to bear arms?
Of course it's clear. Every American has the right to hang a pair of bear arms on their wall. How could that possibly be misconstrued?
I think that's hilarious. Obviously, it's not bear arms, though, like they have. It's bear arms being guns. Third Amendment. This one maybe isn't quite as I don't know if important's the right word, but maybe quite as important today as it was in the past. Because you got to remember, when this was written, when the Bill of Rights was first written, they had not too far in the distant past, they had the British in the colonies, Boston in particular. Remember back to the Intolerable Acts, where they had soldiers, British soldiers in Boston, and they forced the people of Boston to house those troops. So this might not be something really that would happen today so much, probably, but when this was written, that was very fresh in people's minds, and they absolutely knew that they did not like that. So this protects against that. Fourth Amendment, the big one here is this protects people from unreasonable search and seizures, which basically means for you to get your property searched, gone through by the authorities, or seized, taken, they have to have a basis for doing that. You would never have a police officer just show up at your house and say, I was driving by and I looked at your house and I thought I'd sure like to search this, just want to see what's in there, right? Can't happen. For them to do that, they need to have a warrant that was issued by a judge, and the judge would only issue those warrants based on what they call probable cause. So the judge would have to see where, okay, there's some evidence here that this person is doing something they shouldn't be doing. So let's go check it out. So you need that warrant. Otherwise, you're protected against that. Fifth Amendment. This one's actually got a couple things in it. So the first is, in court, you do not have to testify against yourself, where you've heard on TV shows before where somebody's getting arrested and they say you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to say anything if it would incriminate you, right? And then when you're on the stand, let's say you were charged with some crime, and they put you up on the stand, and then you had the prosecution come and say, hey, did you do this crime? You don't have to answer that question, right? Because it could incriminate you. Potentially you did do the crime, and you don't just want to admit it to them. So you're protected with the Fifth Amendment there. Guarantees people what they call due process, so the right to basically have a trial and go through the whole criminal justice process before you would get any punishment for anything that you were accused of. Can't be tried for the same crime twice, so that protects that, if you were accused of robbing a bank and you were arrested and put on trial, went through the whole trial process, and then you were found not guilty, what this protects against is the prosecution saying, well, not guilty this time, let's try again and again and again until they get the verdict that they want. So if you're found not guilty for a crime, you're not guilty. Power of eminent domain, which allows the government to take private property if they can show that that private property is for the public good, sort of for the greater good. And that was something, if you think about Highway 10, that there were some businesses along the new Highway 10 that are not there anymore, and a road's there now instead. And so they would have taken that, those businesses, that property, through eminent domain. Now they would have paid the people what it was worth, but the people really didn't have a choice whether or not they would give it up. The Sixth Amendment, this one is the right of a speedy trial. So if you are accused of a crime, you have the right to have a trial within a reasonable amount of time. So you wouldn't get charged with robbing a bank, and then they say, all right, so you're charged with robbing a bank. We're going to have your trial 57 years from now. And in the meantime, you just get to sit in jail, right? So you have to have a speedy trial within a reasonable amount of time. Now, that doesn't mean within 3 days. I mean, it could be, a few months, but as soon as is reasonable is what this guarantees. It says you have the right to confront witnesses that were brought against you. So if there's a trial and they have witnesses that are saying, this guy did the crime, you have the right to question them as the defendant, or your lawyer has the right to question them. You can have it says this amendment also provides the accused the right to compel testimony from witnesses and to legal representation. So you can have witnesses to defend you. You have the right to do that. So if you were accused of a crime, said you committed it last Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon, you could bring a witness in that said, well, last Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon we were playing golf or something, And then legal representation means that even if you cannot afford a lawyer, you have the right to a lawyer. So if you can't afford one, then the government, the state, will provide a lawyer for you. Seventh Amendment, this one says that civil cases can, if you want, be tried by a jury. And so, criminal cases, generally, you do have a jury. Civil cases often don't, sometimes don't, but if you want a jury, you can have a jury in those cases. Eighth Amendment, this one protects against cruel and unusual punishments. So, I got a couple examples here of different kinds of punishments that I think are kind of funny. So we've got, this poor guy apparently stole something from Walmart. So his punishment was to stand in front of Walmart wearing this sign that he's a thief, or the "We Will Get Along" shirt, which she seems super unhappy about, but he thinks it's pretty amazing. And that's not what this amendment is about. One of the things that often get brought into here is the death penalty. That is kind of the big debate: is the death penalty cruel and unusual? And some places have the death penalty, some places don't have the death penalty. Where it says excessive fines, if you were charged with jaywalking and then you challenged it in court and were found guilty, and then they fined you, $58 million for jaywalking, that couldn't happen because that would be excessive. So those sorts of things are what this amendment protects against. Then we've got the Ninth Amendment, and this one basically says that people have more rights than what is listed here. So what they're saying is this list, the Bill of Rights isn't your only rights. You have rights beyond those that aren't listed. So it just kind of leaves the door open for more rights for people to have and that are protected. Then the 10th Amendment, this one says, this basically is the reserved powers, where it says that any powers that are not specifically given to the federal government, to the U.S. government, automatically revert to the states. So these are this is where they lay out these are reserved powers, right? If it's not a delegated power to the federal government, then it is a reserved power that automatically goes to the states. And we've talked a bit about that already, but this is the amendment that goes with. And here I had said for your Constitution guide, I would have put up some just quick summaries of each of those, and that's what we've got here. So like for Amendment 1 here, what you would do is you would write down freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition, right? Then it asks that you draw a little picture, so you'd do that. Then Amendment 2, right to bear arms, you'd write that down, write a little picture, and then so on. And I'll move my face here just so we can see that. Number 6 is the rights of persons on trial for crimes. So go ahead and go through all of those. And that pretty much is going to get us to the end. So go ahead and go ahead and do that. So we'll catch you later.